Hey everyone, welcome to another episode, a special episode, a holiday week episode of the Niche Pursuits podcast. It is officially an episode of This Week in Niche Pursuits News, but it's a little bit different. We're not going to really be covering news per se. Uh, Both Jared and I were kind of just relaxing with our families. This is the week between Christmas and New Year's. And so we thought it would be interesting to do something a little bit different instead of diving into the news and have these hard hitting topics, right? Partially so we don't have to research quite so much, right? So we can just have an easy episode, but also it's just kind of fun, I think, for listeners to look back on the entire year. We thought it would be interesting to cover the most listened to podcast episodes of the entire year of 2023. And then we're going to throw in a couple of our own favorite podcast episodes as well. And so I think it's a cool idea, Jared. Hopefully listeners enjoy it. What do you think?
Yeah, looking back on this year, 2023, we're on pace to do around 100 episodes a year, right? So 2 episodes a week. Obviously, every week of the year, we're even here on the week between Christmas and New Year's. So, it's probably, I doubt there's many out there who've listened to every one from this year. So it is a fun idea to kind of go back and say, here are the most popular ones and look at it.
Yeah. I agree. And maybe if there is anybody that's listened to all of them, let us know. At the end of this episode, we're going to share our 2 favorite podcasts that weren't necessarily the most popular, but our 2 favorite. If anybody else has a favorite podcast interview, let us know. We'd love to hear about that. So
before we jump into the podcast, I wanted to let you know that today's episode is sponsored by Search Intelligence. Here's a short clip of Ferry from Search Intelligence showing you how their agency built digital PR links to a client's website.
In this video, I will show you how we landed a placement on BBC and dozens of links in massive regional online publications such as Wales Online, Daily Post, and many more. This PR campaign was about the easiest place to pass your driving test for the first time in the UK. This is how we've done it. We simply went to DVLA website, found the latest car driving test data by test center, and downloaded the data in a CSV format. Once we had the data, all we had to do is to look at the number of total tests per test center, then look at the number of first time passes to calculate the percentage of people who passed their test for the first time. Once we had the percentage numbers, we created a press release with our findings. Then we went to Roxhill and found journalists who talk about driving tests, and also looked for journalists who write in regional publications in the UK. In total, we have found about 1,800 journalists and sent them our press release by email. Within less than a day, our story got picked up by BBC, Cornwall Live, Wales Online, and dozens of other publications in the UK, providing our client a tsunami of backlinks perfectly relevant to the audience of the client, who is a specialist in learner driver car insurance. I hope this video is helpful and it shows you how you can also build links with freely available data from official sources.
If you want similar link building PR campaigns for your website, head to search-intelligence.co.uk and get in touch with them now.
I figure let's just jump into it. We're going to kind of run through these and share our thoughts on the episodes. And before we hit record here, I think we both agree that some of these episodes kind of surprised us.
Yeah.
I didn't realize these were going to be the most popular episodes of the year.
I feel like, certainly as a host, I don't really pay a lot of attention to the numbers on the listens and stuff, but the feedback, we're more involved with when it gets shared on social media or different comments we get brought in on. And so perhaps that's part of what has framed, my mindset is the ones that we got tagged on more, got asked more questions on, or that sort of thing. And so, yeah, there were some surprising ones, but this is what the numbers are. The data doesn't lie.
The data doesn't lie. Yep. And so the way that I got these numbers is because the podcast is on several different platforms, but one is audio listens. And so I do have an aggregate number for all the audio listens, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere else that people listen to their audio podcast. I'm able to get that one number in my podcast hosting dashboard. And then there's YouTube. right? That can be a large number of listens or views as well. It just depends on the episode. And so I kind of added these numbers together. And of course, the episodes with the aggregate number of the most listens or views are the 3 that we're going to be sharing. So having said that, maybe let's go in reverse order here.
Oh, okay.
Throw a curveball. 5 seconds ago, I told you we're going to do one order, but let's do with the third.
I'll start at the end of my notes then.
Yeah. Switch that up. The third most listened to episode of the year. And that episode was the interview with Grady Hudd. And so let me share my screen just to kind of remind listeners and viewers what this interview was. I mean, this is done back in March of this year, but the title was How Grady Hudd Grew His Niche Site to $9,000 per month in just 2 years without any SEO experience. And so Grady is on Twitter. He's pretty active there. He may have changed his username. It was Niche Grades. Now it maybe is just Grady Hudd. Anyways, you can find him there on Twitter. But I think I'm going to just give my 2 cents, Jared, and then I'll let you jump in since you hosted the episode. But it feels like, or one interesting thing about this episode of why maybe it did so well is I think people enjoy hearing stories of individuals that are kind of beginners or starting from the beginning, those that aren't making millions a year, those that are making like a feasible, it feels like achievable, but still very successful amount of money, that did it either like without experience or have some unique background, right? So I feel like maybe this is why the Grady episode resonated really well with people, because he shared a story. Hey, I didn't have any experience 2 years ago when I started my website, and now it's making $9,000 a month. I feel like that's a big reason for why this episode probably did well.
Yeah, I agree 100% with what you're saying. We've had a couple of those stories throughout the year of the very much the raw story of someone getting into this without any previous, whether you call it SEO experience or affiliate marketing experience, and just going from a very, rags to riches type story, if you will, and this is just a great story. If I remember correctly, Grady still works full-time, still has a job. He's doing this on the side. He told stories about writing articles as he rode the bus and stuff. And, there's just very much a very relatable story for a lot of the listeners here.
Yeah, and that was the other thing, is that I do believe he did have a full-time job that he was working. And I agree, relatability, is so key, right? And it was for me when I was starting out, when I was looking to quit my job, right? I always wanted to see somebody posting their success online that I could truly relate to. Like, okay, but does this person have kids? Like, does this person work a full-time job? Or does this person have a ton of money, or whatever it is? I wanted somebody as close to me as possible.
Yeah.
That was just one step ahead of me.
Yeah, it's true. We have different types of guests on this podcast, and there's the guests, like one of the ones I will be talking about, who has a ton of experience in this industry. And we look to those types of people for different things, right? Certainly in that podcast, I'm looking for their expert insights. That's what I want to learn from them, because they are more knowledgeable, more of an expert in certain areas than perhaps we or different listeners are. These stories are exactly what you talk about, giving us that shot of inspiration that can help move a lot of people over the line, that says, oh my goodness, I can do this. Oh, this person's doing this. I can relate to what they just said. That was me. That what they said, that was them 2 years ago. That's me right now. And so those types of things are real shots in the arm.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So maybe with that, let's go on to the second most listened to episode of the year. And the second most listened to interview was Forrest Weber. And the title of his podcast interview was How Forrest Weber Grew to $40,000 per month after replacing rental properties with websites. And so Forrest has a cool story, right? He was he had rental properties, was interested in investing in real estate, and then he sort of shifted his mindset mindset, but brought a lot of the same principles, the same processes and procedures to websites. And he kind of devoted his time to building out a portfolio of websites, kind of like he had a portfolio of properties before he looked at it as this investment approach. Okay, I'm going to, build or buy this whole portfolio and see what I can do. And so at the time of the interview, I'm trying to look here, he had 20 websites that generate up to $40,000 per month. So super cool interview and story, I think.
People always love the scale story too. I mean, the first thing that happens in the mindset, not saying everyone does this, but in your mind, once you get a successful first site, is you think, oh my goodness, can I do a second site? Should I do a second site? Shiny object syndrome kicks in, which we talk about a lot here. So this is, it's funny, Spencer, I don't know about you, like the story I've landed on when people kind of ask me about building websites, maybe I'm at a party in my neighborhood, or I'm talking to someone and somehow it comes up about building websites. The best analogy I give people is it's kind of like real estate. It's a little bit like building real estate, and you're kind of building online assets as opposed to real assets, real estate, right? And I think this story with Forrest is partly why he's so successful, is he's treating his websites so much so like that real estate model that he was so successful at before this.
Yeah, exactly. And, part of that approach is looking at both your winners and your losers, taking that entire portfolio approach, and perhaps that's cutting some of the losers, investing more into the winners, right? And learning how to scale the whole process. And so I love the kind of business mind that he took behind this. And then, of course, because he built such a huge portfolio and team, he started a digital marketing agency, right? And so that's also part of his business that I don't know that $40,000 a month included his Digitail, I guess is what it's called, his agency. I don't think so. I don't know that he shared his agency numbers as well on top of that, but he's built a successful agency on top of that as well. So
it was a good listen as well for people. Like a lot of people in our industry are kind of, do-it-allers, right? And he started with the mindset from the very beginning that there are things he's good at in this space and things he's not good at. And I know he spent a lot of time in the interview talking about how he found people to partner with, how he brought on other team members to kind of make up for his lack of expertise in certain areas. And that's a good skill that we can all kind of lean into, especially if scale is on the horizon for us.
Yep, exactly. I think that's so important. A lot of times I get stuck doing all the little details in my business, and I find that I can get a little bit more freedom or scale a little bit better when I just even hire out the simplest of tasks. Maybe it's just a lower level VA that can handle a lot of simple things. And so I love what Forrest shared there. People can listen to that, get a reminder, a refresher, some good business tips. And if anybody noticed on the screen, it says, December 27th. We made an update to this article. The actual interview was about 10 months ago. I think it was like late February, early March is when this interview was actually published with Forrest Weber. So, okay. And so that brings us to the number one most popular podcast of the entire year. For the Niche Pursuits podcast was the interview with Shelly Marmore. And the title here is How Shelly Marmore Grew Her Monthly Income from $700 to $52,000 in 1 year with affiliate SEO. I mean, what's not to love about that story, right? That title. I think it hits on what we were talking about earlier, starting at a level that's understandable, right? You have a website that's making $700 a month. Everybody's like, okay, I can do that, or I'm already at that level. But how do I get to $52,000 a month in a year? That's like a must listen story. And so Shelly tells that story. She is a travel blogger. In fact, she has not one, not two, but three or
four.
Maybe
I think
it's even more. Is
I think
it
it was four? She said. Yeah, I was looking at that.
Yeah, I was trying to remember. I know it was a portfolio, but like four travel blogs, which is interesting, all in the similar niche. They cover different countries or locations.
The bulk of her earnings were on that one big website, though.
Yeah.
Right.
Was it Travel Mexico?
Yeah,
Is that the one?
travelmexicosolo.com, I think it is.
Yeah, travelmexicosolo.com. Yep, is her main site, which is also very cool. When somebody comes on and say, "Hey, I'm doing this and it's successful, and here's my website, so you can go check it out and look at it and learn." Like that's just the best of both worlds. So, Shelly story is super inspirational, and she's scaled quickly. Do you remember what some of the keys to her scaling were, Jared?
Yeah. And I, by the way, I agree with you. Like at first, when I heard that this was the number one episode of the year, when you shared it, I was like, "Whoa, really?"
Yeah.
But when I sat back and thought about it, you said exactly what I was thinking. Like this really had it all. Like it has that kind of from the very basics to success storyline we talked about with Grady. It's got the big numbers, earning mid 5 figures a month now. It's got the short time horizon. It's and then when she shared her sites, there was tons to build off of there. I mean, it's really got it all. But yeah, I mean, I did go back and I did re-listen to parts of this one to prepare for today. I did not get to listen to the whole thing, a lot more going on this week on vacation than I anticipated, but no, it's a really good listen. So a couple things really quickly. If you're listening, you're wondering, no, her site did not get hit by the HCU. She did go down a little bit with one of the core updates, but it looks like it gave back maybe just some of the keywords that she had earned earlier in the summer. So it's still doing very well from what I could see from a quick glance. And a lot of the stuff that she's doing to build her website piggybacks on a lot of the conversations we've been having about what it looks like to build a website going forward in 2024 and beyond. She's really deeply covering the topic. She's pulling on her own expertise. She is a solo traveler living in Mexico and has been doing so, I think she said, for 9 years. So she's pulling in all of her own experiences and all of her own expertise when she's writing the content. She talked a lot about how she did keyword research. She built out big topical hubs with the big keywords, the long tail keywords, and how she creates affiliate style content that really showcases which is best and why. So that's basically the backbone of how she did it. And she kind of shares a great playbook for a lot of the things we talk about going forward.
Yeah, that's a good point. That a site that was successful at the beginning of this year, she really built that great foundation for like, hey, should just be a good business going forward. She's built it right. And one thing that I love here that I, of course, have to point out is that she does lots of internal linking and she uses Link Whisper. So I love that she has her on page, her site structure, everything very well organized and under control. And she's using a great tool, Link Whisper, to help her do that.
Well, Spencer, not to be too ominous, but that won't be the last reference to Link Whisper on this podcast here.
Oh, well, okay, good. I like that. We'll get a double whammy here. Double whammy free advertising.
I hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. Just wanted to take a short break and remind you that today's episode is sponsored by Search Intelligence. I've got a short clip from Ferry at Search Intelligence showing you how their agency built digital PR links to a client's website.
What a masterpiece PR link building campaign. With 20 links in big publications such as The Sun, Express, Mirror, Wales Online, and Still Landing, I would say this campaign is a massive success. We told the press that people should turn on their heating this summer if they want to save money next winter. And we landed over 20 links in national and regional UK publications for our boiler client. That's crazy. The campaign hook was pretty clever. It is a known fact, at least in the boiler trade, that if you keep your boiler off for many months, it might rust and it might get you into trouble if you keep it turned off from spring to next winter. We therefore advise the press, with an expert commentary piece, on behalf of our boiler client, that people should turn on their boilers this summer just when the heat wave is in full swing. This way they can avoid a boiler failure next winter and save money. Massive publications picked up our story, including The Sun, Express, Mirror, Wales Online, and a few more dozen publications, giving our client links, lots of links, and lots of happiness hormones. No wonder that so many journalists covered our story, as this headline is a massive link magnet to their audience. This case study highlights the fact that a clever hook can be applied to any insight or story to make a campaign more successful and more compelling to journalists. Can you imagine when people see this headline in the news, you should turn on your boiler this summer? There's no way they would not click on it. I would click on it. So this was the hook, and this is why this campaign was so successful. I hope this video inspires and shows you what's possible with a clever hook.
Are you looking for similar link building PR campaigns for your website? If so, just go to search-intelligence.co.uk and get in touch with them today.
But yeah, great interview. I love it again because it's just she's very down to earth and very relatable, right? And just a very easy and interesting interview to listen to. So that is why it probably did so well. But I also was surprised when I looked at the numbers. Like, oh, I did not realize she was the most popular podcast of the year. You would think that I would know that because I do look at the numbers more often, but I don't often look at the in a calendar year what's been the best one of the year. So
hey, it makes sense when you stop and think about it, and I think that's cool. I mean, obviously the numbers are the numbers, like I said earlier, but this one makes a lot of sense the more I thought about it. So
yeah, yep, definitely. All right, very good. So that is the top 3 podcasts of the year, the most popular. But Jared and I each had our own favorite. We went through, we looked at the catalog of all the interviews that were done, like 50 interviews, and we picked out each our favorite. And so, Jared, maybe I'll let you go first, and then I'll wrap it up with my favorite show.
Oh man, just curveballs left and right here today.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, this was hard. I mean, I'm the one who did the vast majority of the interviews this year. So not to say that it's like a personal thing, but there's certainly bits, pieces I loved about every single interview. And so this is really hard for me to pick. It's like trying to pick which kid you love the most. Not quite that dramatic, but I have to say that the one that I refer back to the most, the one that I still continue to talk about the most, I send this to clients at my agency. I send it to people that I interact with on Twitter. Like I reference this podcast a lot. And so when I thought about it, I had to come back to this one as my favorite of the year. And that was our interview with Cyrus Shepard on internal linking. There it is on the screen. He did a massive study, analyzed 23 million internal links. It was over 1,800 websites. And the information that he shared on the podcast was so succinct, so clear, and so easy to understand the results that he got. And then the ability for him to really share all the reasons why behind all of it. Like I learned so much actionable information about the process of internal linking, exactly how to do it according to what the data says. And then I got to ask him a lot of questions I've always wanted to know on kind of some in-depth internal linking topics. And he gave really, really insightful answers to each of them.
Yeah, it's one of these, like, it sounds super data heavy, and it is. He did this huge study of 23 million internal links, right? Like that's like PhD level type stuff that, I haven't done that. But it's very actionable. I do love that. He basically, at the end of the day, you can walk away with like, okay, here's not only why internal links are important, but here's how to do it. Right. Like even some of these things I was looking at, right? Like taking all your 404 pages and actually using a 301 redirect, right, to important pages. Some of this link sculpting strategies that you can implement today that can improve the overall authority and hopefully ranking of your website at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, if you're speaking of actionable, like if you're wondering, like he shares exactly how many internal links are the right number. He shares exactly the process for anchor text that you should be using. He shares where your internal links should go, which ones are the most important on the page. All of this backed by data. Very fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I assume this is the second time that you were going to maybe bring up LinkWhisper.
He's also a big fan of LinkWhisper and talked about that. And that's not to, I say that somewhat tongue in cheek, but also I think that that's interesting because here's someone who understands internal linking at like the most nuanced of levels and says that your plugin LinkWhisper does a very good job at a lot of that effort for doing that effort for you. So that speaks to the power of LinkWhisper and perhaps, that it is a plugin that is satisfying the internal linking needs of today's Google and website environment.
Yeah. And like, it was a little bit surprising to me when I first heard the interview. Like, before the interview, I didn't talk to Cyrus and say, hey, are you going to mention Link Whisper or anything like that? I had no idea, right, that he used Link Whisper. He just happened to be familiar with the tool and have used it, and said some great things about it, which is awesome. Which is also a little bit surprising because I think that they sell some software over at Zippy.
I think so. I think he mentioned that too. Yeah.
They've got some tools as well, and so just very cool to hear that. And I guess I'll mention it now. I wasn't planning on mentioning this, but if anybody is interested in Link Whisper, I do happen to be running a special deal right now that ends January 1st. So, if you listen to this podcast episode, tomorrow or whatever, you can get this special deal. Basically, we're raising prices in the new year, but we're discounting the current price a little bit, so people can check that out. Just go to linkwhisper.com if you want to get Link Whisper for pretty much the best price we're going to be offering it at, maybe ever again. You can go ahead and get that. But yeah, I really enjoyed Cyrus's interview. I kind of enjoy the data analysis, the big studies. We tend to reference Glenn Alsop a lot, and he does a lot of these big studies, and it kind of fits in that similar vein. And so I love these types of interviews and studies that he's done.
Well, Spencer, it's down to you now, and I'm very curious to hear your favorite episode of the calendar year of 2023.
Yeah, it is so tough to choose. I was looking at a bunch of these, and you do a great job. I will just give hat tip to you, Jared, for great interviews. And I hear that a lot from people that you do a great job interviewing. So kudos to you. And so it was tough to choose. But the one that I went with was Kevin Espiritu with Epic Gardening. I think it's just such a fascinating story, right? Part of it's the relatability and part of it's the not relatability, right? I'm in awe of what he's been able to accomplish. His story starts really in like 2016, which yes, is 7 years ago. So I guess that's kind of a long time in internet years, but really not that long. In 2016, 2017, he had this very small gardening niche website. And it was like the rest of us, just building a niche website, trying to rank for keywords. He was making, I can't remember now. I even just, $400. That's kind of what it was. He's making like $400 in 2016 per month. And at some point along the way, he decided, if I want to scale this business, he built it up to like $4,000 or $5,000 a month. And he talks about this on the interview. It's like, okay, this is enough to live on, but is it really much better than I could just have a full-time job that's making $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year. That has a little more security, that has benefits, right? And all these things. So he's like, okay, I need to scale this a little bit further. And he kind of kept going on this path of like, okay, how do we scale this? And long story short, now it's an 8-figure a year business. They're doing more than $10 million a year. And I just love that he started with a niche website, but he kept finding ways to succeed in the business, whether that was growing his YouTube channel, which is now at like almost 3 million subscribers, to growing TikTok, which I don't know the number of subscribers, but it's huge, to social media. He's crushing it. To the big one of launching his own products, right? They have a seed company. They have physical products that they sell as well. They're in retail stores. So I just love that he started with the niche site, and now he's just this massive business that is scaled in all ways possible.
I talk a lot about how in my various businesses throughout the years, like businesses always hit plateaus, and it's not necessarily a bad thing or because you did something wrong. It's just businesses go through periods of growth. They go through periods of plateau. And usually when you're at that plateau, it takes another round of strategic insight and thinking about what to do to grow out of that plateau and into the next growth curve, right? And it can be a challenge at every single plateau to figure that out. And websites are no different, and growing businesses, this is all part and parcel to growing businesses. And what I loved about this interview was that, we never really got into the details about how he did each of those things, but we went through basically every growth curve and every plateau and got to hear his mindset about every one of those plateaus and then what he did next. You referenced going from 400 to 4 to 5,000 and then plateau, and then going from 4 to 5,000 to the next. And it's so fascinating because we all hit that spot as we grow our business, our side hustle, our website. We're going to hit these plateaus. And this was a wonderful look into how someone who is very intelligent and very successful has handled every plateau. And at every one of them, he has figured out what's next, how to analyze what's next, and how to pull it off. And it's just such a cool insight into a very successful person's mindset on how they grow and each of the pivots they made along the way.
Yeah. And it's interesting for all the things that you said, but also I still feel like Kevin is very relatable. Yes, he's grown this massive business, but just a few years ago, like, he was struggling to build a $400 a month niche website, right? He didn't come with some special education or some special knowledge, or he's very smart, but I don't think he's like genius level. Like, he's just a hustler that's figured things out and struggled and grown at every plateau, like you mentioned. And then the other thing that probably also made this my favorite is sort of some of the inside scoop that I have behind Epic Gardening. They recently acquired a website, right? That I think is, allaboutgardening.com, that has now been merged with Epic Gardening. And I had the sort of the back seat pass, the backstage pass to all of that happening, because I'm good friends with Jason Wilson and Jared. I know you are as well. So as that negotiation was all happening, and Kevin was thinking about acquiring Jason's website and bringing Jason on, like, I heard all that story. And so being able to also hear this interview and kind of, connect all the dots of what I was hearing behind the story is just really cool to get a really broad picture of how to run a really successful website. And of course, they've merged those two sites. Jason has done that, really all the heavy lifting of merging his old site with Epic Gardening. And if you look at their graph, in Ahrefs, it's just like a straight shot. It's cool to see.
And we did interview Jason on the All About Gardening.
That's right.
On the All About Gardening website, the growth there, and then the acquisition process through Kevin and Epic Gardening. So, you can kind of complete that whole circle if you want by listening to both the Kevin Espiritu interview and then subsequently the Jason Wilson interview, probably, 6 months later, whatever it was.
Yeah, it's like a 1-2 punch, right? You get the whole story to get the whole picture. So very cool. I mean, that's the year. That's kind of our favorites. Those are the most popular episodes that we did. So many good interviews. We have several in the pipeline that are also really, really, we've kind of, you've got 6 or 7 already recorded.
Did you know I recorded 5 podcasts the week before Christmas?
That's impressive. That's so that you didn't have to work very hard this week. I mean, I think this 30-minute episode is about all you're doing. This week, that's about all I'm doing as well. So
you want to take a week off, man? You gotta pay for it up front or pay for it in the backside, one of the two. But no, I can assuredly say, because we've recorded all the way through January and now into February, that we have some really great interviews. So we're not taking our foot off the gas here for 2024. I expect perhaps this tradition to continue at the end of this year, 2024, at the end of next year, whatever you want to call it. And I'm so excited to see what our favorites and what the most successful and most popular ones are going to be.
Yep. So if you're listening and you have a different favorite, let us know in the comments, of course. We'd love to hear that. And thank you so much for listening. We're going to pretty much wrap it up with that. No weird niche sites today, no side hustles, all that stuff. We'll get back to that next week, so don't worry. We'll share results and, insights and things like that next week. But for this week, I hope everybody had a great Christmas. Hope everybody has a great new year, and best of luck in 2024, everyone.
Yep. Happy 2023, and we will see you in 2024.
Thanks a lot.
Today's episode is sponsored by Search Intelligence. Here's a short clip of Ferry from Search Intelligence showing you how their agency built digital PR links to a client's website.
What a crazy campaign. How to Sleep on Your Back. This campaign got us links in Huffington Post, Glamour magazine, Mirror, and lots of other great news publications. Let me show you how we've done it. It was so simple. Our sleep client provided us with expert commentary about how to train yourself to fall asleep on your back. They also gave advice on why it's best to sleep on your back. Once we've had this information, we went to Muckrack and searched for journalists that consistently write about sleep and well-being. We've sent these journalists the advice provided by the client, and within 1 day the links started flowing in. Glamour magazine, a DR81 website, picked it up. Huffington Post, DR88, Mirror UK, DR90, a massive avalanche of links blasted to our client's website with this simple yet effective campaign about how to sleep on your back. I hope this inspires, and I hope you'll use this technique to land massive links to your or your client's website.
Thanks for joining us today on the podcast. Just a final reminder that it was brought to you by Search Intelligence. And if you're looking for link building PR campaigns for your website, just head over to search-intelligence.co.uk and get in touch with them today. Cheers.